crazy. Crazy. How... Do I tell you guys this? I haven't really thought about all I haven't really thought about all this like resistance I've been facing. Like my computer crashed. I'm very much like looking at signs, but sometimes I ignore them. Like I'm doing right now, telling you that I do that. Probably because I'm gonna probably tell you the thing that I just like realized my microphone was muted the whole time for 30 minutes while I was talking about it. Kind of figuring it out actually, but talking about it. So I was on the plus side. I kind of worked through it the first time. Maybe I was just meant to prepare for now and not. It wasn't that I was not meant to say it. It was that I was meant to prepare better so that I could say it more precisely for you to hear me. So I was saying then that there's four fundamental forces of physics, and if we look at Earth, I've already found interestingly the magnetic field in the Pacific as a result of currents. This one, which we've talked about a bunch, and its relationship to Australia and the landmass here, which I didn't notice until now. Like, it's pretty well divided. Australia is pretty much like center point of the Ammonites' original nucleus. And here, the outer ring. Pretty much center is this boundary. And now the new nucleus is pretty much center. So it like cut the mass in half, I think, with this mass, which probably was part of this stuff too. Just cut it in half and restabilized it over here by wobbling. So in order to wobble like that, like it had to like fold upward, so like a surfboard, literally surfing over here. So like its balance point of pressure had to be like moving around here until it moved over, like wobbling to here, to stabilizing the table here while severing all of this stuff apart, just really turning it into what we see now. And I noticed that the current is actually coming this way into Australia. This current I thought was coming from over here. I've been saying it was coming from here. It doesn't actually make sense. Now that I look at it, it's not. I thought it was literally coming right up here, like this one here. But it goes around there, so it really, I don't know what I was thinking. In hindsight, I think it does go over this as well. To go into Australia, but this is all like topside. Now that I've realized this is here, like maybe to here, but this one down here is actually like down here. I realized because this current comes down all the way down here. Like, there's no way. Like this area was right here. It just doesn't really make sense at that point with everything else like considered, accounted for. Like it doesn't really make sense. So I realized that actually the current's coming from, instead of that current is not coming that way. It's coming, the one coming into the bottom right corner of Australia is actually coming this way through the East African Rift, as well as probably this way, which was along here, and then into Antarctica and around it, and then out it though as well. Like over here it starts to channel out here in this region and just pressure into Australia here. here. I realize it's really hard probably for some people to follow along because of this. The map is hard to read, and I'm obviously more prepared for the topics I'm personally discussing. Like if I'm gonna be talking about it, it's because I've been looking at this stuff. So like people don't even. Is it hard to even tell where the line is here? Like this is Australia. I know how like ironic it all is. Probably, don't you think? It's like rain. Okay, so this thing's got something to do with this tongue, maybe. This little point. Hmm. Oh, so like Antarctica was like here probably. I'm starting to think. Or was it? I mean, if this was here, like right up there. This was right up here pretty much. And just probably this current came. So when the Earth expanded, the current coming across here into this ammonite was definitely being sent out this way, and through here was ultimately being sent out this way. Like some of it was coming here, some this way, as like a pressure release valves kind of thing. But ultimately, it was coming a lot this way. So that when the pressure of this current started to release, then it was able to like push off this boundary here, causing an actual separation of the like newly forming Zealandia. Which brings me to the very volatile subject that I'm about to tell you about, because of how right it is. Oh, dear Lord. And what it may reveal. So we had the magnetism. Gravity, I've mentioned in the past that this here looks like dripping. Like it's just physically dripping from it. When really the Earth was expanding, and so what was happening is it was experiencing a current down from this direction, causing it to drip. So gravity is explained by a current flow here. So that's two forces that we see representations of. And then Australia, we talked about. How it did have a nucleus here, and then it became an ammonite by going through a radioactive decay process, many decays, to becoming a new nucleus of this system, which is radioactive decay, which is basically the weak interaction. So the weak interaction has something to do with this, and we can maybe look into that. Just like a penetrating channel like that causes just a void within, a vortex void, to allow for space to where there's not material, to then cause basically a decay. Like it once was like this, and then this current flowed through and it became like this. Oh dear Lord, the things I do probably. And then this current flowed through and it became like this. Sorry everyone I've ever heard and will heard probably, because I don't seem to understand that this is really not okay, apparently. This is probably like more here than this thing. It's maybe more around the forehead-ish of this snake-looking thing right here with a mouth, a tongue, even moving around a bit. But so that represents radioactive decay. So that again, that's these three forces represented. Also electromagnetism. We talked about previously the ways in which it, like, this represents a photon, a wave of photons, a light wave of photons. This represents the photoelectric effect. So we got electromagnetism pretty deeply ingrained into these just like current flows on Earth as well. But that means there's another one missing here of strong interaction, which is basically when instead of decaying, seemed apt that I would open the Dow stock market, as I said, instead of decaying. Anyway, pardon me as I encourage chaos by people realizing their investments have been poorly made because they've been lied to. I'm like, in what way am I lying to people? And then someone's like, pardon me as I cause chaos in response to his lies, even though they're really just misunderstandings, if anything. Which really you guys can like figure out, right? You guys can figure out. I believe in you. I believe in you. Because some things I don't figure out to be misunderstandings. I know I'm not perfect. I've seen so many mistakes I've made already in these videos, and yet at the same time, holy shit, the things I've uncovered. Okay, so the last one is basically newly formed material. So if we look around, the only place that I for certain can refer to as newly formed material off the top of my head is just right here. So how did this form? This formed by a current flowing through it. Okay. And then it had a current on the other, like a pressure holding the current in. So there's a current flowing along the surface, like the surface, the outer boundary of this system of the nucleus of North America, along the surface with a pressure pushing against the current to hold it along the surface to create this boundary, which then allows for the current to produce something like this, but with the matrix on top, not this, but the actually more like the support structure surrounding it. This is like where the current actually is flowing, where like at like these spots, like there's material within the tubes of the current, like porosity, like it's a lower density, but because it's essentially creating less detectableness. Lower detectableness. I mean, at some point, it's just less mass is probably a good enough reasoning. If we can tell these are just current flows, at that point, it's probably, relatively speaking, it's just a matter of just how much mass is there, and that how much mass is there drives where the currents flow. to a point where we can just assume it's uniform mass and the currents are just flowing based on how the mass piles are. So they create these boundaries, though, when there's pressure from the outside, which then allows for accretion of new materials, which then solidify in a way where they're like they don't degrade. Like the Western United States is still a stable part of the crust of, I did it again. The Western North America. Here's United States, here's Canada. That was straight up Canada. It's okay, it's okay. The Western North America is stable because it formed enough of a boundary here for a long enough time. There's enough current, enough pressure to form a stable boundary and a stable enough like basin to hold the material in. And probably a roofing of just the crust layer itself on top of this, where there's kind of like channels that are relatively void. So essentially what I'm getting at here is we've added a new like protons and neutrons to the edge of this somehow, so maybe we can think this through in a way to figure out what the differences are. So this is what it maybe is a little dangerous to tell people because it's true. I'm pretty sure it's true. I just don't know what we could do with the information in terms of, like, because we don't understand its, like, side effects. So I say this with a very warning, warning, danger, Will Robinson, playing with fire, and I am a, don't try this at home kind of person. Maybe, like, sure, I'm playing with fire, but maybe you guys haven't thought things through like I have. Someone just jumps on some, like, money-making scheme off of something I say, and suddenly the world is just getting siphoned of some critical, like, energy within it that it needs, and maybe I even encourage it along because I maybe want to get famous to, like, start a revolution ultimately. Basically, it's not I literally don't want to get famous. I just want to get famous for the purpose of this. Just for the purpose of, like, here, guys. And then after that, you can be like, that guy was an asshole. And just whenever you see me on the streets, just kind of be like, and then that way I can, but, like, I'll interact with me if you want, and not fucking hate me. But just not love me too much either. That's all. We gotta have a balance here. Maybe that's part of why I am the way I am. I don't need a balance here. Okay. So, with that in mind, I've been kind of saying stuff like Kursk here, like, is representative of things, like, really, like, because it has this really solid polygon to it, and then it has, like, regions of voids, maybe, like that, and then regions of high density, where I'm pretty sure, like, the regions of voids are supported by other systems surrounding them that form bonds by just being present adjacently to block current flows when they need to be blocked to prevent, like, the current from just ripping apart the interior here. Oh Lord, the things I'm gonna do. It's all in the conscious plane, though. Hopefully it's not like... Oh, oops. That couldn't have any consequences in the real world. It's all in the consciousness plane. Oh Lord, see the problem. And I just laugh about it to see the problem. So, you know, we need some adults in the room maybe to help. This seems to come across here. Interesting. Why does it go? Oh. Ew. It's like the tip. Maybe I was mistaken. This comes all the way down here. Just widens to the tip here. And then it swings up here. Oh my god, it swings up. Maybe along this curve. Where it kind of comes to this, like, to join over here, maybe. Which then extends out to this eye, which then goes to this snake head. Adjacent to this part. What the, like, maybe even here is the snakehead, like up here, like right there. And then down this way. To really fill in the entirety of the earth, practically. Because then it would mean the snakehead in some way emerges. I don't know if that looks right. Like it should look right proportionally in some way. Like maybe here's some other... Whoa, it's like its mouth again. Like out this way though. But somehow like making sense in the geometry of Earth. Maybe even there. Maybe that's part of what's relating to this. That'll be interesting. If this shape had something to do with this shape, which had something to do with this shape, which had something to do with this shape. I don't know, guys. Okay, so tell me! People are like, this dude's dropping bombs. Tell me whatever you're gonna say. So I've decided. This is a channel, right? So let's just choose a section, like... Doesn't matter, and just a cross section of it. And say that's a proton. And if it's filled, then it's filled with an electron, which then makes it a neutron. And also, some reason there's a antineutrino involved. But I think that's more so the bond. This is the bond itself, I believe. What is the purpose of it? It's not even the... Let's see what all these say. Which has 0 electric charge and a spin of 1/2. Interesting. 1/2 spin. Let's look at this. One half, so it's got a spin on this side, but not into it. It's a plane, so it's just got planes and then a half spin, and elongated. So this thing, let me explain because that probably didn't make sense. I might have explained it already, but my recording got messed up, so I can't remember if it's that one or this one. If I can get to the location that I'm pointing to. So there's definitely there's tabs. We can see a tab here where another body was inserted into to connect it, and then we can see them like I know I found them. Freaking mouse. I think I saw one here kind of forming, so maybe that's how they form. That's not one, but that's probably more how it's formed. But anyway, maybe these are good representations of them, just because like this is what I was looking for. There's this little spot here. Like these tabs seem to have like these spots. Now I was thinking that they're just kind of like energetic threadings that physically like knit the earth together. And they can break. So when a neutron, so to look at a neutron, to get an idea, so neutron, proton, electron, what could they be on Earth? What could represent them here? And an antineutrino. So bringing that into the table, that a neutron is considered a electron, proton, and antineutrino, then that would suggest that an electron is the material filling the channel, which is the proton. Channel equals proton. Electron equals material filling. So there's a electron void here that needs a connection to another system to allow for its electron energy to be stable. And so that's electrons, protons being the channel, and of the polygon. Basically, the polygon shell is the proton, which is composed of material. Proton shell. Electron is like the material filling this region that flows in, that just is in there. So there's like electron in there, proton. But a channel, like truly a channel, to a point where sometimes it can look like that one here. So it looks more like a literal channel flow, and those things like that right there that I just showed basically went into these tabs by it wasn't like inserted, but just by the energy flows that were happening here. They physically caused like a more dense material, I guess, that just was more able to form a threading to hold the tabs together energetically, maybe across sides. Like down below there's another tab from this side that like sticks out this way and sticks out this way. I don't know what it's saying. I don't know. But so like for this one's a good representation too. It has like that. But for neutrons, a free neutron spontaneously decays to a proton, an electron, and an antineutrino with a mean lifetime of about 15 minutes. Okay, so let's say that protons are channels. And so many channels together aren't very stable because they have none of this stuff to support the structure of the channels. Electrons support the structure above of the channels, where the electrons are within the channels. At least in a nucleus. Like maybe there's free electrons flows out here, but in a nucleus there's stored electrons in the protons, coupled with the protons, coupled with, like, here's the proton, here's the electron material. Although in this case there is no electron material, really, it's just a void, right? So really, here's the proton, here's the electron material, and bonds between polygons produce effectively the antineutrino, which is just there. It's stable. It's hanging out. There's a bond, but sometimes the bonds break because the neutron is a free neutron, as they say here. A free neutron spontaneously decays. So if there's a free neutron anywhere on Earth, and a neutron is represented by a body of a channel that has mass that flowed through it, then Zealandia is most definitely a free neutron that has decayed because it had mass flowing, or it had a current flowing through it, which then, when the current was flowing through it, but it was free from this mass, it just collapsed, I guess. Or when the current stopped flowing through it, it collapsed. Something of that nature. Maybe this also is related to the bond being broken here. Oh yeah, maybe there was a bond. This was, Zealandia was forming a bond here, and it broke. Maybe does that make sense? Directionally here. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, it looks like there was a breaking of a bond there. That looks like Delaware. Or I'm seeing things. What else? Like, that is a half spin. 0 electric charge. Because it's just like full. Because it's dense. Which those columns would be. Neutral things are just filled. They're just filled. So no current can flow through them. That's what makes them neutral, is current cannot flow through them. At least not without breaking the boundary around them, like this. This system was neutral, probably, relatively speaking. No current flowing, and then boom, like an outside pressure that broke through and created a vortex and totally transformed the neutron into a new system. Maybe a bunch of proton decays along the way, creating actual protons. Like these spaces. That there's a channel means it's a proton in a way. With a neutron at the end here. Something of that nature. I know I'm just like scratching the surface of this kind of concept, obviously. But for sure it's going on. I guarantee you that is a better description of these things than a lot of things. And it's certainly, not in and of itself, but it's certainly a useful angle to be coupled with other angles. So maybe that's a good time to stop now that I've described the fundamental forces on this map. Here's a accreted material where pressure held it on to basically form new stable protons with some neutrons in there to hold the system stable. Like, they can't just have a long channel with no like intermediary support columns. So they need some neutrons along the way, which is basically just support columns at that point. But I'm sure there's some subtleties to the way that atoms propagate upward through the periodic table stably that I cannot immediately deduce. Like, I was looking at this. Hydrogen, 1 proton, so it only has a proton. So it only has a channel, just an inlet and an outlet, pretty much, or inlet and an outlet. It's just a channel with a shell, but an inlet and an outlet, relatively speaking. Which is probably just like a sphere that just has like a top and bottom inlet and outlet like Earth. Like, this is an inlet. We can tell by the curvatures right flowing into it that it's an inlet. Energetic inlet. Just an energetic inlet to the Earth. Right here, just about. Whereas at the bottom, it's probably an outlet in the Antarctica region. Well, maybe there was some sort of outlet here. I'm almost certain they don't want us to see Antarctica in full detail, and this isn't just because we don't have the data. Even if the people who are gathering the data, it is because they can only get this data, like, they're not being allowed to do this because of reasons that, because, no, son, not allowed over this region. We got Truman Show operations headquartered here. We can't have anyone know about them. That would ruin the fun. We're trying to have fun here, dude. Dude, chaos. Like, can we relax and just, like, have a moment of calm where everyone's like, whew, want to ride? Hang out for a while before we... This even looks like a snake with a mouth opening. Holy crap. Crazy. So many features. Yeah, so I was saying, inlet and an outlet hydrogen, but then helium, which is stable, interestingly, right? It has 2 protons and 2 neutrons. So it has 2 polygons, maybe, because of the 2 neutrons. Neutron probably indicates a polygonal connection point has been made, which is what the anti-neutrino maybe is suggestive of. That's my thoughts, is that's therefore there are 2 neutrons, so 2 polygonal connections, 2 polygons connected twice. And then two channels. Two polygons and 2 channels. 2 filled polygons because of the neutron number. And 2 channels. I'm just trying to think about, like... it seems kind of stable in some way. Like, it's 2 back-to-back neutrons with, like, channels outward, just allowing flow in. Pretty much it needs flow inward to breathe, to, like, be stable. if all the systems are not being reached by the conduits. It's probably like one of those games where you need to like allow like a conduit all the way through. I don't know if there's a game like that, but like a channel through. You need to find the way through the maze to the end. But like by connecting all the dots along the way. So like in order for these two like things to breathe, they need channels. Okay, maybe that. Then we got three nuclei, or three neutrons. I'll just come back for this. Be right back.